Hey everyone, very quickly before we begin, a spoiler warning. I am going to be showing some gameplay of one of the level 100 extreme trials, so if you haven't done that yet, or you just haven't gotten far enough in the story to see both of the extreme trials, then minimize the video. I've muted all of the audio from the recording itself, so there's no spoilers in the music or voice lines, anything like that. So if you want to just continue on with the video, but you don't want to see any spoilers, then just minimize it real quick and listen along. So there's your spoiler warning. So today I want to talk about Machinist. This is the first class I got to level 100. I'll just kind of go over the new skills that we got, eventually some things that have changed to the class pre-level 90 as well, because we do have one change over there, and then I'll just kind of give my thoughts on the changes that we have and what I think about our current level 100 Machinist. Now, when it comes down to pre-level 90 stuff, our Heat Blast got upgraded into a new skill called Blazing Shot. Looks really cool. Basically just an animation upgrade. It still functions exactly the same, but with Hypercharge kind of getting a visual overhaul this expansion. It is a really nice addition, and honestly I just think the skill looks really cool as well compared to our old Heat Blast. Outside of that, nothing really a lot has changed going from level 90 to 100. So when it comes down to our new things that we got an upgraded version of Gauss Round and Ricochet, calling Double Check and Checkmate. These are mostly just potency increases and a visual overhaul, but when it comes down to the Double Check, which is the upgrade of Gauss Round, this is now also an AoE skill, which is really nice because back when we were doing dungeons, Gauss Round was just kind of useless whenever you were doing your trash pulls leading up to one of the bosses in the dungeon. And with it now being AoE as well, it just means that it is going to feel a lot better to use when we are doing dungeons. Then at 94 we get a second charge for Drill, which is also really nice because it means that drifting Drill is something that is going to be a whole lot harder to pull off. Drill was a cooldown that you really had to pay attention to back in the day when you wanted to use your hypercharge, because of course whenever you hypercharge you need to make sure that all of your different tool skills, of which we have 3 of, Drill, Air Anchor and Chainsaw, that all of those skills had sufficient cooldown so that you wouldn't accidentally still be doing your hypercharge window when those tool skills became available. So now having a second charge on Drill, the one that you would usually start drifting like this, means that it's just going to be a whole lot nicer that way. One thing that this does mean is that Drill no longer scales with skill speed, because now it's a charged action that just takes 40 seconds to recharge. It's not going to scale with skill speed anymore like it did in the past. Air Anchor and Chainsaw still scale with skill speed though, so for that hasn't changed, but Drill no longer does. So if your GCD speed is faster than 2.5, you can't actually hit it right as it comes off cooldown because your GCD will be slightly too fast and then you'll start the clip, so you definitely don't want to do that. But it does look to be the case that we want to aim for a 2.5 second GCD again when we go towards our best in slot, so then that doesn't really matter anymore because Drill will just naturally align with the GCD if you have a 2.5 second GCD speed. Then at level 6 we get Excavator. This is a follow-up action on Chainsaw, so when we use Chainsaw the button will change into Excavator and you have a 30-second window during which that you can use this. This is another AoE skill. It does full damage on the first target and then it has drop off towards the rest of it, and this also generates 20 battery gauge, which is really nice because it means that we can summon our queen immediately in the opener because we just hit Air Anchor, Chainsaw, Excavator, and that gives us 60 battery gauge to just immediately summon our queen. And then at level 100 we get Full Metal Field. This is again an AoE skill, full damage on the main target, drop off on the rest, and it's also going to be a guaranteed direct hit crit, meaning that you can't use Reassemble on this. If you have the Reassemble buff active when you use this skill, it'll just stay on you until you use another one, so it won't like accidentally consume the skill, so that you can't mess up with that. So if you accidentally press it when you use Full Metal Field, it won't be consumed and you can just use it on like Chainsaw or something if you were to use that after Full Metal Field. So those are the new things that we got as Machinist. How does it then impact the gameplay? Well, When it comes down to Excavator, that is going to mean that we are going to be generating more battery gauge over the course of a fight, which means that we are going to be summoning our Queen a whole lot more often, which I think is a good thing, because Queen is a cool thing that we want to summon, does nice damage as well, of course, but it just kind of adds to the feeling of being a machinist, you know, like back in the day in Heavensward and Stormblood, our turret would always be out on the field until we would blow it up at the end of our burst window, but the turret was pretty much always there whenever we were playing, and our Automaton Queen definitely is not. So having more sources to build battery gauge to summon our Queen more often is a big win in my book. The same thing goes for our 2 new skills. Machinist is a class that uses tools, gadgets, those kind of things to deal damage, so us now having more tools to use, Excavator, Full Metal Field, just kind of plays more into that fantasy. It also means that we are now going to be generating less heat gauge, which means less hypercharges. Now, it's not going to be like, oh my god, we're doing a bunch less hypercharges over the course of a fight. It's definitely not the case, but over like a full fight, you might do 1, if it's a long fight, maybe 2 hypercharges less, because we are going to be utilizing more of those gadgets rather than just our normal basic combo that generates heat for us. For me personally, that's a big win, because when they got the rework for Machinist back in Shadowbringers, the hypercharge rework definitely was not something that I was a huge fan of. I don't dislike it, but it's also not really like, oh yeah, hypercharge, let's go. I was more of a fan of all the gadgets that we got instead, because I just think it's more fun gameplay to be pressing all of those different buttons rather than just spam the same 3 over and over again. So us getting more gadgets in this expansion is just a big win in my book. It also means that when we go towards our burst window, we want to be pressing all of those gadget skills as well when we are bursting, and then you just finish off the burst window with a hypercharge or 2. Barrel Stabilizer also granting us a free usage of hypercharge is really nice, because it means that you can't necessarily overcap your heat gauge anymore when we go into a burst window, because all you need to do is make sure you have 50 gauge, so you can put in a second hypercharge towards the end of the burst, and the first hypercharge will be taken care of by your Barrel Stabilizer. And even if you have over 50 gauge, you can still use it, because it doesn't give gauge anymore. It just gives you a free usage of hypercharge, which is something that they have done for a lot of classes now as well. Looking towards Viper, for example, that one also just gets a free usage of their burst mode when they use their 2-minute buff. So I do think that's a really nice addition. So overall, I think that with this current Machinist, it is in the best spot that it's ever been gameplay wise for me personally. We've got more gadgets to press. We got some visual upgrades which look really nice. The burst window feels very satisfying with all of these different GCDs that we're going to be pressing, instead of just pressing the hypercharge button essentially, which is what it felt more like back when we first got the rework in Shadowbringers. So I'm a very big fan of this current Machinist. The only small little tidbit that I am maybe hoping that they will change at some point is that Air Anchor is still a single target GCD, and the same thing goes for Queen. Like, they've made basically everything on our kit AoE now. Like, we have an AoE version of Heat Blast, which is Auto Crossbow. We've got AoE Drill, which is Bio Blaster. Chainsaw and Excavator are AoE skills. Same thing for Full Metal Field. Why the hell is our Air Anchor still a single target skill then? Like, I don't really get the idea behind that. Why did they not just change that? Maybe we have to wait until the next expansion where Air Anchor gets an upgrade and then it becomes an AoE skill as well. It just feels like they kind of forgot about it. But honestly, if that is the only thing that I can find to complain about with this class right now, then I feel like they did a pretty good job with our current Machinist. Of course, we're not talking about balance just yet. It's the beginning of the expansion. Balance changes are going to happen when we go into the Savage patch. But when it comes down to gameplay, at least, Machinist feels pretty damn good to play, and if it is a strong contender in terms of the DPS spectrum as well when we go into Savage, then this is most likely going to be the class that I will be playing for Savage, because it doesn't have any RNG attached to it if I were to compare it to the other physical ranged. I've already leveled my Bard, but I'm just glued to my hotbar to look for procs on that class. With Machinist, I definitely don't have that, because there are just no procs to look for anymore. It's just, as long as the rotation is in your fingers, you can just focus on what the boss is doing, and when it comes down to proccing Savage, I think that is a very good thing. So if the class performs well on the Savage patch, then I am definitely going to be playing it. It's always been my favorite ranged, and it is looking to be that case as well, going into this expansion. And that is pretty much everything I wanted to talk about in this video. Let me know in the comments what you think about our current Machinist, if you've already leveled it up. If you haven't, are you maybe looking forward to leveling it up, because I do think it's a pretty fun job and it's definitely going to be my go-to ranged for a little while. But that's gonna do it for me, so I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.